he really needs a little by way of introduction, because most of us would have heard him before on scene production for the original movies Mad Max and Happy Feet. But I'll give a quick bio. Now, Bertrand Russell, if you remember him, he once famously said that one should choose one's ancestors with care. And Greg's life and accomplishments prove that this is good advice. His father was a world record holder, his grandmother an Australian aviation pioneer, and what really bombs me out as a scientist, engineer, is that his great uncle was a famous physicist, Lord Ernest Rutherford, who rose from a New Zealand farm boy to the pinnacle of early 20th century science. He won the Nobel Prize and made a British peer. So genes tell, because by the age of 21, his grandnephew Greg was already a bodybuilding champion, crowned Mr. Australia, and he reached the finals of Mr. Universe 3 times. Yeah, rubbing shoulders with Arnold Schwarzenegger. No, at that level. Having had enough of bodybuilding, he went on to become a multiple award-winning martial artist and a world champion pistol shooter. Now, Greg is still best known for his achievements in the film industry and for his part in directing the Mad Max and Happy Feet movies. He worked as an actor, stunt performer, fight choreographer and weapons consultant for the movie Mad Max Fury Road. That's a sequel to the Mad Max. And it won 6 Academy Awards, I think he told me now it was 7, in 2015. And Greg's team won a string of awards, including the Scene Actors Guild Award for the Best Stunt Ensemble. And like a Duracell character, the man just keeps on going. As a mental health advocate, he serves as an ambassador for Lifeline and Suicide Prevention Australia. And as such, he recently completed a 16-city tour of the USA as a keynote inspirational speaker. We really are fortunate that despite all the demands on his time, that he could still manage a return visit to us. So, without any further ado, I'd like to give him the floor. Ladies and gentlemen, Greg from Borssum.
I've got nothing left to say. I'm going up a level. Just wait 1 second. I was born in 1971. My mother named me after legendary Hollywood actor Mr. Gregory Peck. It was her wish that if she named me after him, that maybe by some small chance I might turn out to be just like him, full of style, charisma, and class. Unfortunately, when I came along and started going to school, my life didn't seem to be following that same path. I was kicked out of 3 preschools by 4 and a half. At the age of 5, my kindergarten teacher pulled my parents aside and said I would be the reason she quit the profession. What made this so much better is my mum was a school teacher, so it made her very proud. But mum also had a really quick hand. She had grown up in a very rough and violent background, and she was good at whacking on the way through, and not just once. So my challenge when I got home from with school reports especially was to get to the one lockable door in our house, which was the bathroom. Now I knew if I could get there before she got to me, then I had a chance. The trouble was, if you ran down the hallway too fast and you hit those tiles, you'd scoot across the floor and God help you if the toilet seat was up. It'd leave you feeling rather flushed. But I grew up, as a lot of you would know, the area in Narrowena. Back when it was Narrowena, otherwise known as, anyone know their old name? Criminal Hill. It was a rougher place back then. It was mostly housing commission. I was the smallest kid in my street. And the trouble in the housing commission sort of area where people don't have a lot of money is there tends to be a lot more violence between the kids and a lot more rough housing. And not that we minded that, but when the kids are 7 years older than you, you become the target for everything. And so I used to get knocked around quite a bit. And it sort of reflected in my behaviour. I started trying to be naughty at school, and I started finding out other ways to create trouble, to get some attention for myself. And that's where I found out I was creative, because I was able to do weird things that you would never think of. When they first brought out the lubricant sprays, the silicone sprays, I worked out that if you sprayed that on the blackboard, the teacher couldn't write. I worked out that if you put 4 and only took 4 toothpicks into the door lock. She couldn't get in. That was my time at school. That's how I filled in my time. My school reports in high school were so bad that I would come up with these crazy solutions. I became a genius with liquid paper. I was like Rembrandt. I could remove the from the unsatisfactory of anything. If I couldn't do that, I would stage an elaborate bike accident where my report would be mysteriously flung from my school bag, landing in the thickest mud possible so no one could ever read it. That was school. The teacher said this to me though, and this is something really interesting about people and teachers and what people say and how it can affect you as a person. And this especially goes from parents to children and grandparents to parents and how it travels down the line. When people talk about you negatively enough, it starts to travel and get under your skin. And it infects the very being that you become. And it starts changing your outlook on what you think you can be in life. My kindergarten teachers told me I'd be nothing. I was sent to the office every single day. In high school, my principal told me I'd be lucky to be in prison or dead by 21. That was the outcome they gave for me. I was getting bullied, I would get bashed up all the time. Now when you're a kid, this can do 2 things. If you're a dog, you'll either roll over and die or you're going to roll over and you're going to bite someone. Well, I decided to bite back. At age 13, I was sick of this. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to do something to change the fact that I'm getting beaten up so often. And just one day, by chance, I was on my paper out in Narrowena and I walked past the shops and I looked up these stairs and saw these 2 large individuals walking up and in through this doorway. So I followed them. And I went up and I peeked through this window and I'm looking inside this strange, looked like a torture chamber inside this glass. I'm looking in there and going, wow, what is that place? And these guys saw me, and instead of kicking me out, they said, come in, have a look. And as I walked into this place, this strange emanation of sweat and hard work filled my nostrils, and I went, wow, this is different. And as I looked around, I realised that this was a place of hard work. And so I decided I wanted to weight train. I thought, maybe if I get strong enough, big enough, maybe they'll just leave me alone. They'll think I can hit them. And so I started training. I put all my paper route money into learning to weight train. 2 weeks into training, I get this wild idea. I walked into the gym and I saw a magazine completely dedicated to this sport, and it was called bodybuilding. And I went, wow, this is amazing. I grabbed the magazine and I ran to my friend's place, who I was training with at the time. And we sat on the floor in front of his family, and I'm flicking through these pages of Arnold Schwarzenegger and Lou Ferrigno, the Incredible Hulk, and I was like, wow. Then I saw the photograph of this one man, a man called Bob Paris. He just won the US National Championships, and his physique was like a statue. Not overly muscled, it was just perfect. And I went, that's what I want to be. So I got so excited, I leapt to my feet and I said to my friend's parents, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to win the National Bodybuilding Championships. And they looked at the photograph of Bob, looked at the 35 kilo image of me, and they broke up in hysterical laughter. But I was distraught because this is something I really wanted. For the first time I had my mind engaged in wanting to be something other than just a deadbeat. And I wanted to be that. So I got so upset, I grabbed my bag and I ran out of their house and I went back to the gym and I sat on the bench. And I just remember looking at the photographs of the champions on the wall, past and present. I thought, you know what? I'm going to show everybody what I can do. And so I went for it. I trained religiously. This was the one place I felt like I was home. And over the years I started getting some development. I started getting bigger and stronger. By age 16, I thought I had it together. I thought, I'm ready. I'm going to do my first bodybuilding show. I'm going to get towards being the national champion. So I go to my first show. I told no one I was going. Now back then, the magazines I had were black and white. I didn't know bodybuilders wore fake tan. So when I walked out on stage, I don't tan well at the best of times. I had a sea of golden bodies and I walked out right in the middle, white as a ghost. The crowd laughed, everyone laughed. I tell you, it was the biggest learning curve I ever had. I stood there and I watched someone how to do the poses. I didn't have a clue. But I couldn't walk off stage. I could have used that as a reason to walk away, to quit, to give up. Because that's what happens. It happens to all of us. It happens to so many people. I heard someone say it the other day. I spoke to the Lego Corporation last week for all their senior executives. And a lady came up to me at the end of that. She goes, you know what? I'm having a hard time. I just can't make this happen. I've tried 3 times. She goes, what should I do? I said, call me back when you've done a 300. Because that's the reality of it. You're going to lose. You're going to lose so many more times. You're going to get told no so many more times than you ever believe. And if you don't have the rhino skin to take it and to give back and to keep coming back, then you're going to quit. And you're going to regret it. So I kept coming back. Now, I didn't place in a show for 3 years. I rang the judging panel actually that night and I said, you know what? I want to know how I can do better for the next show. How can I be better? How can I improve? And he said, who are you? I said, I'm number 27 in teenage division. He goes, oh, the white guy. I said, yeah, that's me. So we'll start with fake tan and then learn how to pose. And so that's what I did. I went out and I started to study on my own. No one would help me in the gym because I was this skinny kid. They didn't believe I had it. But I kept coming back. And you know what? Over the years, it started to happen. I started to get results. And I remember being at my grandmother's place one day and things weren't going so well. And I said to her, you know what? I just can't seem to win. And, you know, she just reflected on her life. My grandmother was a very amazing lady. And, you know, back in 1929, you heard a bit of the story before. She was in a farming field in the back of Quilpie. 200 people stood, this energy in the crowd, looking at this single man standing on the lower wing of a Scottish Avro biplane. Now, this man was looking for anybody who would believe in his vision, his dream. The trouble was, it was 1921, and he wanted 3 months' pay for a 15-minute flight. Now, 1921, that was a lot of money. It was just after the war. People were struggling. My grandmother was 19. Now, out of all these men, women, everyone that was there, no one had the courage to step forward till she stood up and said, I'll do it. She said, the next thing I knew, I was sitting in the back of this plane, had this leather cap on, goggles, and the engine roared to life. And she goes, and we took off amongst this paddock with sheep running everywhere, and we got into the air at a smashing 62 miles an hour, top speed. And she said, we got up there, and she said, it was frightening. She said, I had my eyes shut, and we were going up and down with the currents of the air. And she said, finally, when we landed, she said, it was the most frightening, but most exhilarating time of my life. And she said, I knew that from that point on, I would take and fly myself around the world by air. That's how it would be. And she did. But she said, you have to live your life the same way you would fly an aeroplane. You have to have the adrenaline rush when the engine roars to life. The anticipation as you taxi along the runway. The turbulence as you fight to climb to a higher level. And the calmness when you reach the altitude you need to be at. But she also said this, you need to plan your landings. Because you're going to need to refuel. You're going to need to come down for maintenance. You're going to need the rest. He said, if you don't do that, simply you will crash and you will burn. And I remembered that. I always remembered that. And so I kept coming back with my training and I kept fighting towards this goal because I just thought it was something bigger that I needed to be. And I went for it. Finally, aged 20 years of age, I finally think I'm ready to walk on stage to the heavyweight Mr. Australia, the national title, what I'd been after since I was 13. Now that's 7 years. 7 years of losing. 1 week out from the show, I was under the leg press with just under 2,000 pounds of weight. As I've come down for my final repetition, my knee cracked and folded sideways. A crunching sound that I'll never ever forget. I remember rolling off the leg press onto the floor, clutching my knee, had tears streaming down my face, but it wasn't because of that. It's because I thought if I don't do this now, if I don't achieve this goal now, then everything they said about me was going to be right. And so I got up off the floor. When the ambulance came, they said, we need to take you to hospital. I said, no, if I go with you, I've lost. I walked home. I got my legs straight and I walked home. The next day I was down at the sports doctor and I said, we need to do something. I need to get on stage this weekend. I need to win this show. They MRI'd my leg, they scanned my leg and they said, you're lucky to stand. There's no way you can compete. I said, but I'm going to. So what can you do to make me ready to get on that stage? He said, well, there's one thing we could try. So he got a 23 gauge needle, forced it under my kneecap, and drained out 2.5 cups of fluid, strapped it and iced it, and I went back to training. We did this every single day leading up to the competition, but I managed to get out on stage and I managed to win the national championships by 1 point. I went back the next day to my friend's place. I hadn't been there in 7 years since his mother had laughed me out of the house. I simply knocked on the door. She opened it. I handed her my trophy. I just smiled and I walked away. And I never went back. But what it did for me, it reinforced in my head what you could do with the power of a dream, what you could do with the power of that single-mindedness. When you want to be something, go for something, let nothing deter you. So I kept coming back, and I thought, you know what? I want to go further. Let's see how far I can take this thing. So I became the world's youngest professional bodybuilder at age 20. I went to 3 Mr. Universes and finaled in all of them by the age of 21. When I kind of had enough, said, you know what, I've done what I set out to do, I'm out of here. And I retired from the sport. The trouble is this, when you stop doing something, when you lose your goal, what happens? You flounder. And so many people these days flounder. They don't have a clear goal, and that's why we fall off the perch. That's why things don't go well. That's why we lose track of ourselves. We need to have some sort of goal to work towards, and it's not just for us. We've got to remember the picture of life that we have can't be just about us. It's got to be bigger than us. It has to be bigger, otherwise something will hit you that's going to be bigger than you, and you will stop. And I got lost. I really got lost for about a year. I had a really hard time. My family came up to me and said, do you want to join the family business? My father's an amazing joiner, carpenter, wood carver. He does fantastic timber work. His passion, not mine. But I didn't have a goal, so I said, I'll do it. I got involved in the family business and things were going really well, but my heart was somewhere else. You see, one thing my grandmother had inspired me is to dream, and I started dreaming as a young kid about making movies. I had no idea how to do it. I had no clue how I was going to do it. That's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be in the movie industry. So Dad came up to me one day and he said, you know what, Mum and I are thinking of stepping back. How would you like to take over the family business? It took me 6 months to get enough courage up to tell my dad. Because you know when your dad or your mum looking at you in the eye with their love and their passion about what they want, and you go, no, I want to make movies. Now Mum wasn't so understanding. Mum's a 9-to-5 school teacher, job, all that sort of stuff, to have that steady thing. Dad was a bit more of a dreamer. My father's always been a kind of crazy individual. At 14 years of age, my dad had a passion, and his passion was kayaking. But his family was broke, and he couldn't afford to buy one. So instead of giving up, and this is the biggest thing he ever taught me, instead of giving up, he just thought to himself, how else? Now while you're sitting there, I'm going to get you all up. Everyone stand up. I don't care how slowly or fast you do it, but let's do it fast. With energy. How much energy do we have? Yes, all right. Now that we're up, that's good. Okay, I want you to say very loudly, how else? How else? That's not loud. Come on. Pretend you're yelling at your kids. Ready? How else? How else? All right, now let's do it together. You ready? 1, 2, 3. All right, fantastic. Sit down. Enjoy the rest of the show. Okay, how else is one of the biggest things you can ever teach your kids. And I don't care what age they are, you can ever teach your kids. Because when a roadblock comes down in front of you, everybody stops. But you know what it's done? It's allowed you to be creative. It's allowed you to look at options that you never thought of before. When something stops in your path, it's not a stop. You go, right, well, how do I go left? How do I go right? How do I get under or over? How do I go through? That's what it gives you. Options, creativity. That's how things get invented, because things don't work. You don't keep bashing your head against it. Find another route to do the thing you want to do. So my dad, instead of giving up, my father quit school at age 14, got an apprenticeship as a joiner and a boat builder, so he could teach himself how to build his own kayaks and start going towards what he wanted to do. People would say to my father, Colin, you're crazy, because my father can't swim. Not at all. And he's taking on the hardest whitewater rapids in all of New Zealand. Age of 21, he'd completed every river in the country. And he goes, you know what, I had this wild idea. I thought, I'm going to take on the world record for crossing Cook Strait between the North and the South Island of New Zealand. So Dad made this special kayak. It's in the Wellington Museum. It's like a laser beam. It's the thinnest, no one else can sit in it. People have tried, they can't actually sit up in it at all, even Olympic kayakers. He made this thing, it is so fine. Three ply layers, you can hold it up like this. As he said afterwards, he said, I should have put more work into the seat. It was a piece of timber. So when I got out of the boat, my legs were numb, I couldn't stand up. But he went for this. And the 25th of May, 1963, my father set out to take on the record. The record at the time was 5 hours, 14 minutes. Now, I don't know if you know Cook Strait. Who's ever been to New Zealand? Been to Cook Strait? You seen that water? Not the smoothest bit of water around. So he took on that record that day, and he smashed it, and did it in a time of 3 hours, 40 minutes. A record that still stands today, made by a kid that couldn't swim, in a kayak he built himself. So if that doesn't give you hope for something, what does? So when Dad was telling me these stories about himself, and he started reflecting on his own life and his own passions, he said, you know what? if you want to make movies, go do it. I'll back you. And then they both did. And I went away and I started. Now, I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I'd never read a screenplay, I didn't own a camera, I had nothing. But I was going to do it. And just when I thought hope was sort of lost, a friend of mine, I was still doing carpentry work on the side, a friend of mine had all his tools stolen. I said, you know what, have mine, I'm done. So I gave him all my tools to force me into this position. And I started trying to make my way. For 3 years I went around to all the film companies in Australia. No, you've got no talent, you're too big, you're too this, you're too that. I never had what it took. Never had the goods. But instead of stopping, I kept thinking what was said to me by my father, my grandmother, which was, how else? How else do I make it? How else do I get through this? So I started to think outside the box. I thought, what do I do? I had this wild idea. I've been doing martial arts for a while now. I had a good physique. I actually had hair then. And I decided that I was going to go for this dream. I thought, oh, I'm going to do it to Hong Kong. I'm going to go to Hong Kong and make Hong Kong action films. How do I do it? I had $170 in the bank. That's all I had. So what did I do? I registered a business name called Blade International Productions. That's all I had. But it was a dummy film company. I got all of my photographs together, all my CVs, all of that stuff, and I sent it all across to the Hong Kong film companies. I went to college at night and I started to study Mandarin. I speak it really badly, but it was enough to get me by. And guess what? They all called back and said, when's he coming? We're very excited to meet him. And so I was on the phone pretending to be someone else representing me. I said, oh yeah, this amazing young martial artist, he's looking forward to getting across there and showing you what he's got. They said, but when's he coming? So I had to sit down and calculate how much money I could save to find out when I could go. I got a one-way ticket, and I said I'd be there in May 1995. And that's when I flew to Hong Kong. And that's when I started my career in the film industry. And things were looking great. I had such a good reputation building. Things were going wonderfully. And a week before I got the leading bad guy role, because you know how in the West it's flip side, it's always the Asian bad villain, you know, we're in China, we're the bad guys. So I was the lead villain in this massive production, $200 million film. A week out from it getting shot, Tony Leung, leading actor, wins the Best Actor Award at Cannes Film Festival, took off overseas and broke all the contracts. And the film fell over. I came home with nothing. Had to go back to the building site. But while I was working on the building site, getting dejected and down about what life was doing to me, I thought, you know what? It's not over. How else do I do it? How else can I make this happen? So I started writing my own films. I didn't have a clue how to write it. I just started writing things. And then I started getting cameras and anything cheap I could afford to get, like a cheap computer, cheap camera. And I went out, got friends together, and I started making my own short films. But each time I made one, I made sure it got better. It escalated in production values, better actors, better anything. And then the third one I made won the New York Film Festival for the best action short film. And that got me started. I was sitting at home writing with my then girlfriend, who's now my wife. She was dumb enough to stick around me. And I'm typing away and we had nothing left at all. We had no money, no credit card money, we had zip. And she said, what are you going to do? That eternal question you get. And I said, I'm going to sit here until I can make this thing work and I can sell the screenplay, or until something better happens to take me into the film industry. And I'm not joking, 30 seconds later the phone rang and there was a guy called George Miller. He rang and said, I've been seeing and watching what you've been doing. I think we should meet for lunch. Now here's the funny bit. I'd never seen a Mad Max film. I don't like car films, I don't care about it. Never, and that was his biggest films back then. He'd done the Babe films and a few other things, but I'd never seen one of those movies. The Happy Feets weren't done yet, so he'd never done any of that stuff. So he invites me out for lunch. We sit down, he said, I think we should start doing some work together. Show me more of your stuff. Show me your action reel. Show me the things you can do. And so I did. And that was it. That lunch changed my direction. The next week I started writing with him. And then we started making films together. Now the first film we made was interesting because I was writing with George, sitting there writing this film, and nothing to do with what he was doing. He'd moved on to this penguin film, this little tappity-tap penguin film called Happy Feet, which was small then. It wasn't big, it was small. I get a phone call 12 months later, I'm writing in the studio. He said, Greg, do you want to direct Happy Feet with me? I thought, yeah, I'm obviously the logical choice. I know nothing about computers, nothing about penguins, I can't dance. So I've been the perfect choice for this film. But you know what? The one thing I've learned in life is to say yes. And if you can teach your kids any of that stuff, say yes. And work out the details later. So I said yes. I thought, you know, if I say no, the opportunity is gone and I will never get another one. But if I say yes, sure, I might stuff it up. He might sack me. But if I get it right, I've got a shot. So I said yes. I walked into the first meeting and the digital director sat there and he's talking in acronyms, BMOs and objects and back files, and I sat there for an hour going, I have no idea what I'm doing here. I just need to go home. But I kept coming back. And you know what? We stuck it out and we learned, and I never ever, the greatest things I learned in that film wasn't about filmmaking, it was about team leadership. So when I went in the front doors of the building, I said, George, just give me 1 week to feel out what's happening with all the teams, because things weren't working. The film was a year behind schedule. It was all bad. I said, you want me to run this thing? I need to see what's happening under the bonnet. So I walked around this building and I get to see what I call compartmentalized thinking. You see people that work in offices, they get their space. They're like, gone. That's mine, precious. They get this space and they protect it. It's theirs. And don't you want to come into their space? Ooh, you've got your own space. But what does that do? It creates compartmentalized thinking. This becomes yours, this becomes theirs. You don't work together. I saw people emailing from desk to desk. Not even leaning out saying, hey Bob, you busy? No, it would be an email. That was the primary communication. People were blaming each other. So there was this really, really toxic environment. I said, we have to change this, George, if this film's going to work. So what we did, we got all the work, we had 1,000 employees, 1,000 employees out to our motion capture stage. And while they were there, we had a massive carpentry team come into our building and they chopped down all the internal walls. All the non-load-bearing internal walls. Any desk had a little ridge about that high so your stuff couldn't fall off the back, and that was it. All these managers thought they were awesome. We used to get managers in the lunch line, and the lunch line's one of the great learning curves of my life too. I used to, every Thursday we would give lunch to the entire crew. 1,000 people would get lunch. And all the managers and team supervisors would walk their way to the front, asked all the workers and get their food, and off they'd go. But what did that do to morale? Everyone standing there is like, why are you more important than me? So I would stand 150, 200 people back and listen. Because at lunchtime, everybody bitches. Hate the manager, hate this, hate that, that's not working. So you listen. And guess what? People tell you their problems without even thinking about it. People tell you what's not working in the film or in the pipeline. And you listen, and you know what? You get on the phone to other people who can fix it and you make the problems go away. So that's what we started to do. We banned email. I said, if I see you emailing, I said, I'll sack you on the spot. You will now get what we call foot and phone. And we made it an actual program. You had to do foot and phone. If you had a problem with something, you would get up off your backside, which you love sitting on so much, and walk up to here and go, hey, when I got this shot, it didn't work. How do we fix it? No blame, find a solution. And if that didn't work, go upstream further and find the solution. And we started getting communication. The managers that were doing all that stuff, they became center of the room. I said, you're going to be the nucleus of the cell. You are now going to lead this team from the place you should be. Not for your own office with your own ocean view or whatever it might be. You are going to be in the guts of that room so everybody can talk to you when they need to talk to you. And it changed the whole dynamic of the film. It changed everything. And that film went from a year behind schedule to a year ahead of schedule, and then it won the Academy Award for Best Animation Film. It was an amazing experience and journey. It taught me so much more about life and about people than it did about filmmaking. Because you've got to remember, anything successful you do in life isn't about the award. And I can tell you that firsthand. I've won so many awards I can't even keep them at home. They're at my parents' place, or they get thrown out, or they get given to someone else, or I take the nameplates off. I've got hundreds, and it's not being egotistical, I've got hundreds of stupid things. But when you get to the end of it, and you win something, you get really depressed because the goal you've been chasing for so long is gone. And you now have to find a new goal. And if it's something big, like when I won the World Shooting Championships, I fought so hard to get there, and I had that planned out for 3 years. I'd been working for it for 7 years. And finally, I'd had in my journal for 3 years, every day I wrote this same passage in my journal about how I was going to win this thing. And then 2014, when I won it, I got depressed. Why? Because it was over. You've always got to have a goal to work for. So Happy Feet was done. Finally, we get ourselves together. We're going to go make Mad Max Fury Road. So we get all prepped up, we go to Broken Hill to get all the stunt testing done, and bang, war breaks out, the studio shuts the film down. So they said, well, you know, you guys have already got the stuff for Happy Feet too, do that. So we made Happy Feet 2, which was a horrible film, to be honest with you, in my opinion, but that's another story. We finally got to make Mad Max. Now, Mad Max looks like a wonderful, big experience, extravaganza. It was a really hard film to make. The personal journey of that movie, and this happens to all of us, we go through environments and situations we don't want to be in. It taxes us a lot. And sometimes we take all that stuff home with us. And that's what was happening to me. We were living in Africa in the back of nowhere making this movie, trying not to kill people every day. And I was there for 100-hour weeks, plus the Sundays we were doing, plus everything else. My family life was, they were there too, but they suffered. We all suffered. But we got through all the action of the film when we went $30 million over budget and the studio shut us down. Now what looked like something wonderful and great was all over in a heartbeat. Now we had everything invested in this film, all our time, all our hope, our money. And in the stroke of a pen, it was gone. And we came back home with nothing. Guess what? It was on my birthday too. We were shut down and there was no chance of recouping anything, and we were now struggling very badly financially. I walk through the door at home and I get a letter from the taxation department. I have to call them. I owed them $60,000 for the wrong tax they'd done with us on the film, and so I had to pay that as well. So now we virtually had nothing. And things were looking pretty grim, so I had to go back to what I never wanted to go back to, which wasn't even carpentry, wasn't joinery. I became a labourer at the bottom of the lift shafts in the Barangaroo construction site. So in 2 weeks, I went from working with Charlize Theron and Tom Hardy, constructing some of the biggest film work in the world, to the bottom of the lift shaft, scraping mud off sheet pile walls with a shovel, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. But what they did up here was devastating. You see, I'm a strong guy, and this is the trouble we have with people, especially men. Men more so than women. Women like to talk more than men do. Agree, men? But we need to listen to the ladies more, because they do talk, and that's helps them get through. You know, and so we don't talk, we shut it in, we protect our family, we try and make ourselves strong, and we shield them from it. But what happens as that happens, it's like being in the corner and Tyson's punching you and punching you. You take the hits, but only so many. And eventually weakens you to the point that the light dims so much you can't find your way out. And you take another solution. And that's where it took me after a year. I was in a very, very bad space. It was my birthday that next year. And I remember trying to work out how I was going to continue on. We had no hope of getting this film up. We had no hope of making it. We were about to lose the house. It was just going so badly. The unions kept stopping the job. I sat on the edge of the bed looking at my kids that morning as I slept, not knowing if I was coming back or not. And just at that moment, my little boy opened his eyes and just said, "Love you, Daddy." And I looked at him. I said, "What am I doing? You fought through stuff before, you can fight back from this." So I went into work that day and I just had a different attitude about me, but I walked through the doors a little bit late. I got into the site just as a friend of mine, Benny, walked past me, who was obviously going through the same stuff I was in a different way. Went up 14 floors and was then lying beside me. Life can crush you sometimes. So we have to build resilience into ourselves to be able to come back. One of the things I'm noticing more and more these days, especially with the kids, is the suicide rate. Up the coast, we had another one the other day at Gosford High, so it's happening a lot. And the reason it's happening is because we've lost the true art of communication. When you had a problem, when we were kids, you talk to your mates, you talk to your friends. Someone would see it. But nowadays, everyone's doing this or this. And we've forgotten how to talk, we've forgotten how to communicate with people for real. Everyone's got all these forms of communication, as you talked about before. We've got Facebook, there's Twitter, there's Snapchat, there's Instagram, there's all these forms, there's email. But we've forgotten how to talk to each other. When you see those idiosyncrasies where someone might be having a hard time, you see them smoking 30 cigarettes, you go, "You good?" "Yeah, I'm okay, I'm good." You know they're not good. But when you can see them and look them in the eye and say, "Are you okay?" you might get the answer you need to hear. The answer that they need to give. I didn't get the chance to say that to Benny. But when the police dealt with us at the scene and I ended up being up on the top of the building talking to them about what had happened, the incident that had happened, I went up into this room and there was 1,000 workers, big, strong, tough blokes, sitting there, not knowing what to do. And I thought, you know what, I've had enough of this. And I just stood up, and it was the first time I ever spoke. And I told them about life and how it can hit you and how it can knock you down in this vortex of negativity where you just can't find your way back. But if we talk and we bond and we grow together, together we can fight it. Together is one of the great words, together. Because when you're going through hardships, you feel alone. Everyone here I know in your life at some point in time has been through negativity, hardship, financial hardship, troubles, whatever. Everyone's been through something. But as soon as you don't feel alone and you're with someone, life doesn't feel so bad. And so I said to these guys, together we can make a difference. But you know what? I said, if anybody else in this room was feeling the same way, you come and see me when I'm finished. And I said, I will walk you to help myself. When the room cleared, 6 men stayed behind and said, we are thinking of doing the exact same thing. And we walked them to help, and they are still here today. That's when I decided that I needed to speak. That's when I decided I wanted to become an ambassador for Lifeline, for Suicide Prevention Australia, and encourage men, because I don't look like an office worker even though I'm dressed in a suit. You never see me in this stuff outside of speaking. I normally wear jeans and a t-shirt that's normally torn. Because guys, especially guys that think they're tough outdoor guys, won't talk. They won't talk to a psychologist. They won't talk to someone in a suit. Because they go, how do you know my hardships? You've never been down here. And that was the journey and the turning point for me. The very final day I was on the site, I had this epiphany. I forgot my hard hat. And as I was walking down what we aptly named the hole, all these guys walked towards me and thought, oh, my hard hat. And I walked back between all these people, all these workers, and it felt amazing. Like this salmon going upstream. It's this moment of clarity of, wow, I so need to be out of here. And so do all these other people. And so I made that choice and I changed and I started writing a book. I wrote a film. I did a whole lot of other things. But we got our film back on track. And we got it out there, and of course it did win 6 Academy Awards. But I made a conscious decision to leave the film industry at that point in time because there's more important work to do. You see, making movies is fine. It's fun. It can be, a great experience. It can get you fame and a lot of money and stuff. But people matter more. The journeys of life matter more. The people around you, being your family and your kids, matter more. And I'll tell you why. I became this serial achiever. After winning the World Shooting Championship in 2014, I decided a mate of mine came up who'd already scaled this mountain called Everest, came up to me and said, oh, Greg, what are you up to the next 6 months, 8 months? I don't know why. He said, feel like climbing Everest? Oh, yeah, okay, why not? Let's do that. That sounds good. Without giving it a thought. And that's been me always. I've always gone, sounds good, let's do it. And I'll think the details through later. So I just started training for Everest. And Everest training isn't easy. If you want to go to the top of that hill, it's a big journey. We're in altitude chambers, 5,500 metre settings. You're running on rowing machines for 3 to 4 to 5 hours a day. Sometimes we did 10 hours in an altitude chamber. Then going to the climbing walls. Then doing 30 kilogram weighted lifts. So it was just non-stop for hours every single day. This happened to be January a year and a half or a year and 3/4 ago. I was training on a 40-degree day. I'd done the chamber training. I went out into the hills where I live and I started doing hill climbs. I forgot my water. I got home and I was about to teach a martial art class when I jumped in the shower and I felt like I'd been hit across the head with a sledgehammer. I clung to the wall and I thought, something just is not good right now. And you know the difference with your body when it's just not good or when it's just not good. It was just not good. I walked to the mirror, I looked at myself and there was nothing different. But I went out to try and find the keys to the martial arts school. I couldn't find them and I said to my little boy when I went, couldn't speak. I'd lost all power of comprehension, all power of speech, and I didn't know what was happening. And what made it worse, I had about 30 kids turning up for a martial art class. So guess what? I went and I taught the class. Thinking the entire time that any time during this class I might drop dead. I couldn't speak to these kids, but I'm a very physical teacher, so I started doing it just with movements. I got to the end of that, my wife calls and she finds out from my son that I can't speak. Gets on the phone to a friend of mine who's a neurosurgeon who rings me back and says, I'm not joking, but if you don't go to hospital now, you're probably going to die by midnight. So I head off to Royal North Shore Hospital, and there I ended up in a stroke ward. I'd suffered a major stroke, which luckily broke into what they call a shower. Broke into 3 sections that hit 3 sections of my brain. They said if it hadn't done that, it would have killed me on the spot. But all these awards and all these wonderful things we've done in life, and I mean, I've done a lot of stuff, didn't come into my head once. All that I cared about was my kids and my wife. I just need to get better for them. I need to do everything for them, for the people around me, the people that matter, and that's what changed my outlook on so many things. So I start doing things now for the greater benefit of other people. The books I write, I'll happily give to people. It's not about the money. It's about making a difference to people's lives and making people improve and making people grow and helping people who are struggling. Because if people are having a hard time, they're not going to reach out for help. You've got to reach in and you've got to help them up. When your friends are struggling, look out for it. Don't ignore it. If you push yourself, you've got to remember, you might be retirees, but that doesn't mean you've got to stop. You've all got goals, you've all got other dreams, other things to do. Keep working towards them. Don't give up on yourselves and don't sit back and go, it's over, now I'm retired. You're not. My dad's 82, he still goes like a bat out of hell, non-stop. My mum's 75, nearly 76, same deal, and she's going through all kinds of stuff, polymyalgia, rheumatica, all kinds of things, and she still gets up and does everything because it's still going. Live your life to the fullest because we get one go at it. Give it everything you've got, enjoy every moment, and then leave a legacy in any way, shape and form you can for your kids and your grandkids and their grandkids. Your knowledge, your experiences, it'll save them so much over time. Everything you can do to improve their lives, give it to them. Don't hold back, give them everything you've got. And then when you finish, then it's done and you've lived a great life. That's what it's about for me. That's what it should be about for everybody. Making the world better than when we came in. And if you do that, you teach your kids how else. You teach your kids not to stop. You teach them to follow through on their dreams and aspirations. You teach them not to be a procrastinator. If you can do that stuff, then you're going to have a wonderful, wonderful experience and life and great kids and great grandkids, and your life's going to be fantastic. So thank you for your time. Quick way down.